We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. I'm Robert Phoenix, and tonight you're dialing in, tuned into 11th House Radio. And as always, on Sunday nights, we get into astrology, what's happening out there and in there. And there's certainly a lot brewing in the out there with what's happening tonight in Milwaukee, of all places. Now, we have our latest shooting of a young black male. How come young black females never get shot? You ever think about that? It's a curious sort of reality, but we'll shelve that for another show at another time. Young black male, and let's identify who he is. His name is Sylville K. Smith. He was 23. He was at a traffic stop, and everything went bad when he allegedly ran from officers. Okay, so again, this is a show about astrology, but we have to frame this. So he's at a traffic stop, and he gets out of his car, and he starts running. Now, of course, this is Fox News, maybe CNBC, maybe MSNBC. They've got a different version of this. Perhaps he has a slow gait, walks away. I don't know. But I guarantee you, it doesn't really matter what color your skin is. If you get stopped at a traffic stop and you start running away, things get heavy. All right, they're just going to get heavy. So allegedly, and then he turned toward one with a gun in his hand. Now, this is apparently true because it was captured on video. So he turned on the police to fire on them, and then he was then fired upon. Now it says here both Smith and the unidentified officer who shot him are black, Milwaukee Police Chief Edward Flynn said. And apparently that was not given much attention to the citizens of Milwaukee because there has been a subsequent riot that has broken out, and they're turning on their own neighborhoods. They are actually burning where they live. And they're going to be having more protests. So this is a hot button, folks. Here we go. Now, a couple of days ago, in fact, it was yesterday, I wrote about Tisha B'av on the 14th of August. And I'm not going to go back in and read my post. But essentially what I said was that we had Pluto conjunct Capricorn, that there was going to be something dark that was going to be born. And it wouldn't be, there was this kind of catastrophic picture that was being painted by bloggers and YouTubers about this August 14th day, that so many people died. There's an incredible amount of sacrifice and blood and religion and history when it came to the Jewish culture on this day. And not only that, but modern events like the 7/7 event in the London Tube, there was the Brussels bombing. They're all kind of centered around this Tisha B'av, floating holiday through Jewish space and time. It's not really a holiday, it's a commemoration. Now, what we did not have today was we did not have the catastrophic epilogue to our existence. No. But something did happen today, and the event in Milwaukee, looks like it might be this dark birth that comes out of this event. And I said it would be like the growth of antimatter, because we're coming up on a very significant day astrologically. And I've been talking about this day, not just me, a lot of other astrologers have been talking about this day, and we all have our various interpretations of what the symbols and the numbers and the energy means. So the day that I'm talking about is here in August, when Mars is at 9 degrees and Saturn is at 9 degrees. That's the 23rd. It's 0 degrees Virgo that day, and the moon is in Taurus. But what we have here is we have a Sun-Mars conjunction. Classic. Absolute classic conjunction. And then they'll be conjuncting with Antares, also in the, it is in the constellation Scorpionus, but it shows up in Sagittarius, of course, Western Placidus. So we have Antares at 9 Sagittarius, Mars at 9 Sagittarius, Saturn at 9 Sagittarius. What do we have? We have 999. Invert 999. What do we have? We have 666. So that's on the 23rd. Now remember, 23rd is an occult number. Just to tell you how occult it is, I was watching this really interesting movie called Midnight Special, which I actually recommend as far as the film. And there's this one scene at Midnight Special where the protagonist, who's played by the father, is staying at a hotel room. And the plot line is that his son is some kind of avatar from another world. And he's actually picked up by, they live in a cult, a religious cult in Texas, and he becomes their prophet. It's a very interesting movie. I'm not going to share a lot with you because there's twists and turns, and I don't want to, completely rip you off and be a spoiler. So I recommend the movie, but there's a scene where the father is at a hotel of the young boy, Alton, who he's trying to sort of kidnap from this cult. And the number on the room of the hotel is 23. And they could have gone with any number, of course. Now, it might be trendy to put 23, but 23, of course, is an occult number. We've gotten into this before. It goes back to, at least in the modern mythos, Byron Geisen, living in Morocco, who had the curse put on him by the cook, who he said cooked him a terrible meal. And he said, every time you see 23, you'll be haunted by it and you'll eventually die. You will die, and the number 23 will kill you. And of course, this is what actually happened to Brian Geisen. He was able to see 23 everywhere, and it accelerated his madness. And he couldn't sleep, and a lot of crazy things happened to him, and he eventually died. So the number 23 took on immense occult significance. Well, here we go, 0 degrees Virgo on the 23rd of August. Moon in Taurus, Mercury in very critical Virgo there. Venus also in very critical Virgo. And Mars in Virgo. We've got 4 planets in Virgo. This is the energy of Savonarola, the monk, the priest, the Italian priest, who is very, very pious. So pious that he almost overthrew the entire Catholic Church from the inside out because it was not pious enough. So this is Savonarola energy. And I believe he's a Virgo, if I'm not mistaken. Let's look. He's a very interesting character in the Bible. So let's, not the Bible, sorry. Savonarola. Savonarola. Let's try that. It's not in the Bible, but in the pantheon, there it is. In the pantheon of, look at that. He's born September 21st. What I tell you, Savonarola. Let me read you his biography. He's a fascinating cat in a very puritanical kind of way. Girolamo Savonarola, born 21 September 1452. He died on the 23rd of May. Was an Italian Dominican friar and preacher active in Renaissance Florence. He was known for his prophecies of civic glory, the destruction of secular art and culture, and his calls for Christian renewal. He denounced clerical corruption, despotic rule, and the exploitation of the poor. This guy is a classic Virgo, okay? He prophesied the coming of a biblical flood and a new Cyrus from the north who would reform the church. So he's got some prophetic abilities. In September 1494, when Charles VIII of France invaded Italy and threatened Florence, such prophecies seemed on the verge of fulfillment, while Savonarola intervened with the French king. The Florentine expelled the ruling Medici and at the friars' urging, established a popular republic. This guy had some pull. I mean, he went in and he talked with the French king, and then the Florentines expelled the Medici, and at the friars' urging, it's like he says, come on, give me this thing, let me run the show, established a popular republic, declaring that Florence would be the new Jerusalem, the world center of Christianity, and richer, more powerful, more glorious than ever. This guy would have made a great televangelist, although he's a little severe. He instituted an extreme puritanical campaign, enlisting the active help of Florentine youth. So that's like his version of Hitler Youth, right? He got the youth of Florence to, I guess in Nazi Germany, they had the brown shirts. These kids were the mohair shirts. In 1495, when Florence refused to join Pope Alexander VI Holy League against the French, of course he's not going to do that because the French backed him, cut him a deal. The Vatican summoned Savonarola to Rome. He disobeyed and further defiled the Pope by preaching under a ban, highlighting his campaign for reform with processions, bonfires of the vanities, and pious theatricals. In retaliation, the Pope excommunicated him in 1497 and threatened to place Florence under an interdict. Ooh. A trial by fire proposed by a rival Florentine preacher in April 1498 to test Savonarola's divine mandate turned into a fast fiasco, and popular opinion turned against him. Savonarola and two of his friars were imprisoned. Under torture, Savonarola confessed that he invented his visions and prophecies. If you're under torture, unless, of course, you are the complete and utter incarnation of the Spirit of Christ, in many instances, you will confess to just about anything. Okay? So maybe he did invent them, maybe he did, we don't know. He was under torture. Doesn't legitimize it. On May 23rd, 1498, church and civil authorities condemned, hanged, and burned the three friars in the main square of Florence. Savonarola's devotees, the Piagnoni, kept his cause of Republican freedom and religious form alive well into the following century, although the Medici, restored to power in 1512 with the help of the papacy, eventually broke the movement. So these guys were Puritans. And with all this energy coming up in Virgo, we are summoning the strange and disincarnate spirits of one Savonarola. Now, the August 23rd day also includes the Taurus moon, which I like a lot. It is exalted moon, exalted in Taurus. And then we have Mars in Sagittarius. Of course, we talked about that 9 degrees. Jupiter, hey, let's throw Jupiter into the Virgo gangbang there. Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun all cavorting together in sign of Virgo. It's a critical time. Saturn, 9, we talked about that. Now we've got Uranus going retrograde, 24 degrees. It's going backwards. Neptune in Pisces continues to go retrograde. And then we have Pluto, which is retrograde again until it goes direct. Let's see. Pluto's retrograde for a while. It doesn't go direct until, where are we? September 27th. So we've got the outer planets all going retrograde on that date in August, the 23rd, and true node, and again, more Virgo. Can there be more Virgo on one day? The only thing that would make it more Virgo would be Mars and the moon. And it would be so Virgo that we'd all be constipated for about 24 hours. That's what it feels like. So we did not go through the Tisha B'av spectacular Giannini Brothers fireworks display. No. What we have is we have an event in Milwaukee that is being triggered by a number of other events. It's kind of like, do you know how a nuclear bomb works? Essentially, what happens with a nuclear bomb, it's a series of explosions, and one explosion is quantified, and the next round of explosions is considerably bigger. So it's not just one bang. It continues to expand and expand and expand and expand and expand. That's how the nuclear bomb, theoretically, nuclear power works. So everything that happens before that event and that explosion feeds into the next iteration, next iteration, next iteration, until it has this thermonuclear concrescence, right? So all these events that have been feeding into this latest event, they're not dissipating. What's happening is they're multiplying and they're becoming larger in terms of their potential, because there's no closure on any events. There's no closure whatsoever. If there's closure, then you stop the chain reaction. This is what happens with a nuclear explosion. It is a chain reaction. So what we're dealing with here is a chain reaction of these events that are taking place. And each one is exploding at a higher and greater level because they're exponentially expanding without any intervention and without any closure. And this is all by design, by the way. It's all happening by design. So what we have is we have this burst of antimatter. This is the Pluto and Moon conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. Now, I pulled up a chart for tonight. This is the astrology and the chart of the moments. And this is a little bit before the show. The sun in Leo was on the first house, the cusp. So we're talking drama, the personification of drama. And we have all this Virgo, again, accumulating Venus, true node, Mercury, Jupiter, and a first house and second house. So we're dealing with the self, and we're dealing with values, and we're dealing with the core. So these are the first two houses are most intimate when it comes to the development of the self. And then, of course, we have this ongoing T-square with Mars, with Saturn, with Neptune, and Venus. But I talked about that in my last post. It is a mutable T-square, and it's like a powder keg. Mutable is, think of mutable as nitroglycerin. You don't know when it's going to blow, but it's going to blow. Mutable is changeable and volatile. Nitroglycerin is volatile. If you look at cardinal energy, which is catalytic, you know it's going to blow, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be fast, and it's going to happen. With mutable energy, you don't know what's going to happen. Mutable energy is like the sleeper cell of the zodiac. It's just sitting there, and when it comes, it comes, and change is going to occur as a result of this. So we have a lot of mutable energy in that fractional T-square. And we could get into the Venus-Mars square that's happening right now. Venus is moving on, Mars is at 5, but it's also in square with Saturn. You know, when you get into Venus-Saturn squares, relationships become really important, front and center. Things they need to be dealt with. They need to be talked about. They need to be lived out or played out or thought out. Agreements come down to the nitty-gritty, the fine points of contracts and details. Because relationships aren't just the people that you're involved with on an intimate level. They can be business partnerships. They can be legal agreements. And so we're dealing with that right now. You know, we're looking at what it takes to have a long-term vision as it relates to relationship and partnership. And Virgo is completely discerning, right? It wants to get into the details. It revels in the footnotes of experience. This is what happens. So then we have a trine from Venus and Mercury to Moon Pluto. Now that Moon Pluto trine, I actually got into a little bit earlier. That is birth energy in the fifth house, just a couple hours ago. In the fifth house. When did I do this? It was around time 7 a.m. Let's see. Okay. So I get this. So we have this Pluto-Moon conjunction. And it is trining off of Venus, and of course the true node, and even Mercury. So while there are some intense issues, the Venus-Mars square, conflict between the masculine and feminine, Venus-Saturn square, conflict between the relationship of the individual to the hierarchy, social hierarchies, corporations, governments, business, et cetera, but also the square off between the individual and the compact and the contract, the karmic relationship that's going on. There's some flow happening. And really that flow is coming off of Mercury trine Pluto, Mercury trine Uranus. See, this is also a really good time to get in there. And this is tonight and going into, to some extent, tomorrow, because Pluto, Moon, or Moon's going to get closer. You know, like talk about stuff. Talk about your feelings. Get down. You know, get 6 feet under with your feelings. If you need to with yourself, maybe it's with another person. But this is a great time to explore at a level of depth that is not going to flip you out. And that if you find something down there, you'll actually make some concrete changes to your life. How about that? So don't be afraid of doing some self-examination. Don't be afraid of going beneath the first couple of levels of your process. Get down 3 or 4. In fact, it would be a great time. And I am not just here to tout my services, although I guess I could, but this would be a great time to do some in-depth work with an astrologer or a psychic intuitive or somebody who has a really profound relationship to process and divination. So it'd be a great time for that because a lot of locks can get opened here. And dealing with, especially if you're a woman, dealing with Moon Pluto, those keys can unlock the secrets and the mystery of your own femininity and the transformational, there's that word, power that is available to you right now. And to understand it and come into it as fully as you possibly can. And there is a level of redemption with your own birth mother. How about that? You know, seeing where you came from and being able to kind of square that up, you know, or be able to move it into alignment. There's some other interesting energies. We've got Moon sextile Neptune right now, which is compassionate. Moon square Uranus, hey, it's forcing all of us to deal with our emotions in a different kind of way. So this could be a really good time to get some insight. For men, Moon, Mercury, trine, Moon, Pluto, it gets into your feminine, your anima, and how you can sort of embrace that. You know, embrace some of those qualities of your anima as it relates to maybe the woman in your life or maybe the woman that you want in your life. And I don't know, maybe you're listening to my show and you're not into women, in which case this will relate to you finding it in yourself and kind of, you know, being that thing, being the anima versus integrating it. And there's a difference there. I'm just trying to be as sensitive as possible. We've got Sun trine Uranus happening at this point in time. Sun in Leo, Uranus in Aries. This is going to go on for the next 2 days. Now, that's a very Aquarian kind of energy for the Leo Sun. Makes it very, very progressive. Now, what I want to do is I wanted to talk about the energy over the next 48 hours when we get into the full moon in Aquarius, because this is where some of this stuff is really going to kick in and culminate. Before I do, why don't we get into some birthdays? Let's see. Whose birthdays do we have here? Let's get into this. Hold on a second. We're going to go. Right here. So the 15th, and some of you are going to be listening on the 15th or already are. Let's go over some of the more famous people born on this day. How about starting off with the A's? Ben Affleck. And we have a Rodin rating of AA, which means it is spot on. This is about as exact as it gets for the birth date. Cancer rising, Venus on the first house cusp. He's got Saturn and Gemini in the 12th. People that have Saturn in the 7th house, 12th house are dealing with more than just an existential loneliness. This is the aspect of the spiritual self that does not feel like it belongs in this world. And Saturn in Gemini also represents a hard form of duality. Now, he has Mercury in Leo, second house. He's got a strong, deep speaking voice. And he has Mars in Leo Sun in Leo conjunct Mars in Virgo at 0 degrees. So there's a Sun-Mars conjunction. That Sun-Mars conjunction denotes fire, intensity, action, and passion. People that have Sun-Mars generally tend to be really good athletes. I have no idea if Ben Affleck is a really good athlete, but he also has it in the 3rd house, which is Gemini's house. So he's got a very kind of Gemini restless quality. I'll bet you he's fast. Certainly, he's a fast talker. I've seen him in a few films. He's got Pluto square Venus, on his ascendant. And Pluto right there at the beginning of Libra, 0 degrees, and Venus at 7. It's a wide square in the sign of Cancer. So Venus-Pluto squares intense relationships, epic, archetypal relationships, and relationships that don't always work out, but to some extent they influence the world around us. Of course, we saw him do that with one Jennifer Lopez, and now he is in the news again with his wife, Jennifer Garner. How about that? A couple of Jennifers. There's your Venus right on the ascendant Cancer, squaring Pluto, doing everything in his power to stay out of the courts and transform and resurrect that relationship. Moon in Scorpio, 5th house, trine Venus on the ascendant. This guy is charming. Of course, we know that. The Moon-Venus trine gives him kind of a power of magnetism a little bit. You know, he's compelling. He's got some compelling energy and charisma. Mercury trine Neptune. He's got an interest in the mystic arts. I can tell you that right now. Perhaps it had to do with an early relationship with Catholicism or some other faith that he studied back there on the East Coast, but he has definitely an interest in the mystic arts and is practical at the same time. He has a Sun-Neptune square in his chart and Mars-Neptune square, which dissipates energy. And there is the potential here for some kind of addiction. In Scorpio, I'm going to guess here. Ooh, it's Neptune in Sagittarius, not Scorpio. It's Neptune at 2 degrees Sagittarius. I'm thinking that has to do with commitment. He's addicted to not committing. Just my sense here. Pluto square Jupiter in the charts. He will work hard and reap the reward and benefit of that with Jupiter there. He's got Jupiter at 28 degrees Sagittarius, just a couple of degrees off the galactic center. It is the highest planet in his chart. It is in the 6th house. Ben Affleck is basically below the horizon. He is all about development, energy development, which is interesting because, you know, when we look at a chart like this is the chart of somebody who's like a householder, somebody who's like a blue collar guy in a lot of ways. You know, he's not really out there in the world making huge amounts of money and being a star. It's all very internal. So where does it come from? How does it work? how does Ben Affleck become somebody who is famous? Well, he's got a Pisces midheaven. And one of the things about astrology that you need to know is that when there are houses or aspects, like, say, for instance, Chiron or the true node in one of the houses, of course, it's going to light those houses up. But if there are houses with no planets in them, they can certainly be effective and certainly serve as some kind of sign or signifier about where that person needs to go and the type of energy that they're going to encounter as they go through that process. So, for instance, with Pisces on the midheaven, Ben Affleck is drawn to things like good works, to some extent maybe religion and mysticism, and clearly the arts and acting. Pisces is the great dissolver. Pisces has all 11 signs in it, so it can be anything. And people who have Piscean midheavens tend to be drawn towards the arts and creativity and spirituality in some form of service, or drug dealers. This is what happens with Pisces on the midheaven. So, to some extent, maybe we can even make a case. Let's just throw this out there. Maybe we can make a case that when there are planets in houses, that we are predisposed to act in the realm of those houses with that energy. So to some extent, we're locked in, and maybe we're slaves of those houses. And what about the houses that are free, the houses that are open, the houses that will allow us to move in and bring our own furniture into that negative space? Quite often we focus on what we have in our lives, right? We have this, or we have this, or we have this, we have this. But every now and then, the don't have or the empty space drifts in. It becomes a contrast to what we have and what we don't have. Now, for some people, they can go in a certain direction with that. For other people, what if they use that negative space, that empty space, that allow them to appreciate what they did have? And then the empty space is maybe areas or things that they wanted to move into and explore. You see, that is, I think, the potential of houses that are unoccupied. So for Affleck, it's almost the entirety of the top/bottom of his chart. 8th house, empty. 9th house, empty. 10th house, empty. 11th house. Those are all areas waiting, absolutely waiting to be occupied and filled. And clearly on the midheaven at 19 degrees, there's Pisces, and then a little bit of Aries there, which is about, I get more than a little, 20 degrees varies in the 10th house. So it's not just having a relationship with the arts, not just having a relationship with the theater, but that Aries energy to get things done. The Aries energy to get things done. Well, let's see who else's birthday we have here. Hold on. What do we got? Let's go back here. We'll hit the back button. Today is also Sri Aurobindo's birthday. One of my favorite gurus from India. He was a handsome dude. Look at him. He'd be a hipster. He'd be a hipster in today's culture. Aurobindo, that's Ben Affleck. Hold on, we're going to switch that chart. Aurobindo is a Leo rising, Jupiter-Sun conjunction. How about that? How about that for a forceful? You don't get more forceful than that. The only thing that would make that more forceful is if the Jupiter-Mars conjunction, in the first house conjunct the ascendant. I mean, that might be the conjunction of somebody like Peter the Great or Charlemagne. I mean, that'd just be so off the charts. He's almost there. He's got Sun Jupiter, so Jupiter's expanding the sun onto the ascendant. This guy is larger than life, Aurobindo. And the thing about Aurobindo, he's really into the body and immortality and the cells, and he was very esoteric about his relationship with mysticism, science, and the human body. He was actually kind of a groundbreaker. In fact, Michael Murphy, one of the founders of Esalen, was deeply, deeply influenced by three people that were at Oroville, which is where Aurobindo had his community in India. And the three of them were Aurobindo, the mother, and Sat Prem. And they did a ton of work around the body as it relates to immortality and enlightenment and the cells. And Carolyn Mace, I'm sure, studied a ton of Aurobindo and the mother and Sat Prem to understand energy medicine. Anyway, well, this guy did not become immortal. Rarely do people achieve that. a symbolic state, but he had a powerful chart. Pluto in the 10th house. He transformed culture. That's what he did. That's what Pluto in the 10th house does. And again, absolutely, utterly larger than life. Moon at 27 degrees Sagittarius conjunct the galactic center. This guy's got a supercharged chart. Mercury in Virgo, and that's at 15 degrees in trine with Pluto, in trine with Saturn, grand trine in Earth, Saturn in Capricorn, 6th house, the body, health, Pluto in Taurus, the body and the transformation thereof, Mercury in the 2nd house, in Virgo, Taurus's house, the body house. Man, of course he's into the body. It's in the freaking chart. And then, just to top it all off, guess what? He's got a second grand trine. Neptune in Aries, Moon in Sagittarius, and he's got the Sun, Jupiter conjunction in Leo. This is a powerful cat. Unfortunately, he's got the Mars square to Neptune, just like Ben Affleck does. And that Mars-Neptune square just absolutely drains off energy. It drains off creativity, and also in the person can create a sense of victimization and also addiction. So, and his Mars is in the 12th house, conjunct Uranus now. I've studied me some Mars in the 12th house lately. And when that happens, when Mars is there in a person's chart, they have things that happen in the material and corporeal world that look as though people are fucking with them behind the scenes. You see, because Mars in the 12th house represents hidden enemies. Mars in the 6th house represents, guess what? Open enemies. So he's got a Mars-Uranus conjunction together in the 12th house. His inner life was turbulent. It was thunder and lightning on the inner realms with Mr. Aurobindo, and some of that stuff would have to come out somewhere. I think it would be with the moon. This guy was incredibly restless, very, very restless. Also had some issues a little bit with authority. But if you're going to be a guru and you're going to break the patterns and the spells of the material world, I could see where that would happen. Very interesting chart, Mr. Sri Aurobindo. Let's do one or two more, and then we'll sort of shift gears here. We're going to be doing a little bit of a short show tonight. So if you want to get in and maybe do a live reading or two, I'd say get in the queue if I were you. Let's just see what else we have here. All right, so we have Ben Affleck, and we didn't get out of the A's, and we had a couple of really interesting charts. Let's see who else we have here. Menachem Begin. We'll skip him. What else? Napoleon Bonaparte the First. How about that? The man with the hand in his pocket. It's his birthday on the 15th of August. And let's check out Napoleon's chart. So Napoleon Aurobindo and Ben Affleck. Scorpio rising. He's intense. He wants power. Jupiter in Scorpio, expanding that into the first house. Oh, he's got an interesting chart. He's got a grand trine, and he's got a mystic rectangle, and he's got a T-square. He had a lot going on. Sun up there in the 10th house. Leo, the king. Roy, right up there and near the midheaven. So this is what he wanted to be. He wanted to be king. Now, he's got planets that are, in better aspect than the sun. He has a sun square Jupiter, which means he overreached because Jupiter expands, right? So he overreached his, I suppose, lot in life and his conquest. He probably went too far, perhaps fought a battle, won too many. And that was something that sort of did him in with that Sun-Jupiter square. Now, other than that, his sun really isn't in aspect with many other components in his chart. His grand trine comes in with Mars-Neptune. We can't seem to get away from Mars-Neptune tonight. But here in the 10th house, it's actually quite creative and messianic. Trine Pluto in, how about that, Capricorn, which is where we are now, and trine Uranus and Taurus, so we have a grand Earth trine. The mystic rectangle has Venus in Cancer, in Uranus and Taurus, so they make a sextile, correct? And then Uranus trines Pluto, and then Pluto sextiles Jupiter. And then we have a Jupiter-Venus trine, and then we have the opposition between Venus and Pluto and Uranus and Jupiter. The classic mystic rectangle. And of course, the T-square that I mentioned was Mercury square Uranus and Mercury square Jupiter. This fellow had an issue with authority. Big time issue with authority. The mother plays a large role in Napoleon's chart. I would have to say I know nothing about his life, but I might go forward and venture that his older sister or a sister became instrumental in his raising, development. Hello? He came from a large family. There were 13. There were 13 Bonapartes. And he was number 4 of 13. So there were 9. So it could be conceivable that an older sister would play a huge role in his life. Let's see what we have here. The 4th of 13 children. Doesn't say much about his parents or his upbringing. I'm just going to go on record. Maybe there's a Napoleon scholar out there who can tell me about his older sister who performed the role of mother. Anyway, this is kind of another big, larger-than-life chart. Venus-Mars sextile, Venus sextile Uranus. He had unusual relationships, and he had unusual sexual needs. I'm just putting that right out there. I can see that in this chart. I know nothing about his sex life, but I think it was a little on the kinky side. Unlike Savonarola, who had absolutely no sex life at all. Let's see what we have here. We're just through the B's. We got Bonaparte. Let's see who else. Anybody interesting? Julia Child. Her birthday tomorrow. She was great. She was like very theatrical when she did her cooking show. She was so Leo. Let's look at her charts. Let's have a look at a lighter chart, shall we? Double A, Lois Roden, again, all over this one. And she has Saturn on the ascendant. You know, she had a very long working career. That's Saturn on the ascendant. Square Venus, square Mercury. You know, as she got older, she appealed to a younger audience. She had almost like a cult-like following. And she had that weird speaking affectation. You know, I think that's the Mercury-Venus conjunction square Neptune. But also 4th house, she had, she has the double life as a spy. Well, that's Gemini on the ascendant. How about that? Julia Child was also. She was a spy. Ooh, I like that. Yes, of course, Gemini rising. Pluto. Where's our Pluto? 29, Gemini. And all that stuff in Cancer in the 4th house. Sun, Mercury, Venus, all those Cancerian, 4th houseian kinds of things like cooking. Aquarius on the midheaven, she used TV. I mean, it was Julia Child and Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet, who were your TV chefs for a very long time. And with Aquarius on the midheaven and the true node in Aries, where she wants to put her energy, 11th house, that's the broadcast medium of that time. She was very successful. Hey, look at that, another Jupiter in Sagittarius, conjunct the descendant. I wonder how many husbands or wives, husbands, not wives. She wasn't born late enough for that. Husbands she had. Copious amounts of relationships with Jupiter on the descendants. Moon in Libra, she had good aesthetics. And she worked at her craft, the lunar craft of cooking, for a very long time. That's the square to Saturn. Lovely chart. Everything's below the horizon except for Uranus, 9th house. I think she has some very interesting political beliefs she didn't really talk about. That's my 2 cents on her with that. Lovely Julia Child. Lovely, lovely, lovely. All right, we're just going through the C's. Mike Connors, the guy who played Mannix. We're not going to do his chart. Let's see who else. And the Farber, Lucas Foss. H is anybody there interesting? Not really. I is not really. J is not really. K, E, not really. What else do we have? M's. No. O, P. No. R's. S's. So. T, no. U, no. And V, definitely not. W, Y, Z. So really the stars of the 15th are Napoleon, Ben Affleck, Menachem Begum, if you like this chart, Julia Child, and Aurobindo. Those are your best birthdays for tomorrow or today, depending on where you're listening, the 15th of August. You're listening to 11th House Radio. I'm Robert Phoenix, and we're going to go through the planets for the rest of the week, and we're going to talk about this Aquarian moon. The Aquarian moon. Why don't we do this? Why don't we play a little bit of music, and let's meet up here in about 15 minutes or so, and we'll talk some more astrology, and we'll definitely get into the Aries moon. I thought I had one of my tracks lined up here. Again, since these are going on YouTube, I have to be very careful about what I play because I get tagged. I get tagged for stuff. So why don't I play... I'll just play one of my tracks again. German Friend by me, Bowman Matrix. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Just at the top of the hour, you're listening to 11th House Radio. And we are back. Welcome. Apologize for the brief delay. We are gathered together here tonight on the 15th of August. Of the eve of Tisha B'av. We're talking astrology. This is the 11th house. I am Robert Phoenix, and it is sort of the run-up here to the Aquarian full moon. And the Aquarian full moon is an odd moon. The Aquarian moon, in general, is an odd moon. But when we go into the oppositions, and these oppositions can be very powerful. Remember, we are living in a supercharged, supernatural, super experiential time. And because of that, I have a new reading that I'm offering folks. It's called the Everything Reading. The Everything Reading. It is your natal chart, your draconic chart, which is the chart of your soul, your numbers, your major tarot or your major arcana of the tarot, your Chinese animal, and your mind signature. And I bring them all together into one reading. It is a 2-hour reading. You'll get it all. If you don't know that stuff, you'll get it all. And I'll put it together in a way that is connective, explainable, and explodes the big picture of who you are. If you're listening to this broadcast and you hear what I'm sharing with you, I'm going to give you a 25% discount on that reading. How about that? Which means $25 is coming off that reading. And so no, that's a 10% discount because they're $250. So 10% discount is $25, right? So we're going to take another $25 off of that. So that's $200. I'll take another 5%. It's $195. Well, that's a big discount. But I'm going to do it. If you're listening to me on tonight's show and you want the Everything Reading, I'm going to take 25% off. That's $55. Just go to my website, robertphoenix.com, robertphoenix@robertphoenix.com, or rpm1122@zoho.com, and I'll be happy to honor your request, or I will honor my offer to you as your request for the Everything Reading. Pretty good deal, 2 hours. There's a lot of matter in there. I'm also doing a weekend/week in Ontario, not British Columbia, Ontario, Canada, just outside of New London, to be exact. And that is starts off in the last weekend of September. And the event is Astro Yoga. I'll be doing 4 lectures in conjunction with 3 yoga classes and some wonderful live organic meals grown right there on the property. Very limited group setting, 15 people. So if you're in Canada, if you're in the London, Ontario area, and you want to be a part of this, go to my website, go to the top part of my chart where it says Astro Yoga, click in, sign up. It's going to be super limited, just 15 people, and I've had the link up on my site. I've had one person sign up already within 48 hours, and I haven't really promoted it. So if you're in Canada or you're in upstate New York or you're in Michigan, you want to hang out for a few days, do some yoga, listen to me lecture on astrology. I've got 4 pieces I'm working on, which is the balance of the masculine and the feminine with Jupiter in Libra, Eros versus anger, because we're into the Jupiter-Uranus opposition. And there's a lot going on over that 48 hours. We've got a hot tub there. We're going to do Starry Mythos at night. We're going to bust out my cell phone. We're going to look at the stars. We're going to talk about sort of what those constellations mean archetypally and even in ourselves. Go to my website and check it out. What I wanted to do is talk a little about this Aquarian full moon coming up, because when we get into this full moon sun opposition, we're talking about fixed energies. So Aquarius is radical. It's radical. Leo is not about being radical. It's about following order or being the one that lays down the order that others must follow. Leo is the energy of kings and queens and authority. Aquarius stands in opposition to that. Opposition to it. Now, the best analogy for Leo Aquarius, in my estimation, is the relationship between the king and the court jester, or the king and the fool, right? Court jester fool. And the court jester fool is Aquarian. He's a strange fellow. You know, like, what did the court jester or the fool do when he got back to his quarters, his little home? He took off his little, his little helmet, his bell hat. You know, he slunched down and said, "I had a shitty day today with a fucking king." And then he drank probably about, half a gallon of mead or whatever it is they drank, and lay around naked in his house. And he became like Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now and Punch Mirrors. And then he'd get dressed up the next day and he'd go be the court jester again. I don't know what he did, but it's odd. I mean, he's always in the court razzing the king. That's his role. That's why the king has him. The court jester is employed so the king does not get too powerful, egotistical, and high and mighty. This is the nature and the relationship between Leo and Aquarius. Aquarius is that energy which is the trickster. It's trickster energy. It is energy of the masses. It is energy of the vox populi. It is radical, and it doesn't always think to the best of its abilities. Case in point, during the French Revolution, it was the proletariats who were urged and empowered to accelerate the death of the bourgeoisie. Do you know who was behind all that? It was the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds were the people that fired the proletariat up. They were the ones that backed everything. It was their presses, the Rothschild-owned presses, that urged the people on with verve and fervor, right? So that they could get all fired up and do the unthinkable, which is overthrow the government and slaughter the aristocrats. But what happened with that? Well, I'll tell you what happened with that. The Rothschilds wound up getting a lot more power because they had their competition killed off. They didn't have the quote-unquote intelligentsia and the minions of the ruling class to compete with anymore, and to maybe, just maybe, come to the aid of the people. You see, this is a false revolution. The French Revolution was a false flag. How about that? So, total false flag. A psyop, maybe more of a psyop. But people were so manipulated during that time. So here we have this Aquarius Sun opposition, and we're going into that with the moon in what? The moon in Capricorn, conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. It is the birth of something. When we get into the moon and Pluto, we get into the energy of the lunar phase, the lunar cycle coming into fullness, right? So it's not quite born now, it's actually born under the new moon in Leo, but here it has a mutation in the gestation, and it is going to become full, right, and delivered in just a few days. So we have this event in Milwaukee. It is the birth of the antimatter. And we'll see where that goes. People that moon in Aquarius tend to be eccentric. They can be extremely nice people. Don't get me wrong. Extremely nice people. They can be really talkative. They could go from talkative to not so talkative, because Aquarius moon is eccentric. So you can go in a couple different directions. They generally tend, on the surface, to be, pretty reasonable people. And then you get to know them, and they're freaks. Let me tell you, they're absolute freaks. Moon in Aquarius is one of the kinkiest signs in the zodiac. Now, you may not know it, and their kink is different. It is not your standard kind of leather bondage, watching somebody else do it with your mate kind of kink. No, it's different. It has its own unique things that turn it on. Sometimes pain enters into it. I know a person who has moon in Aquarius, and one of the things that turned them on the most was wearing an incredibly tight corset. That was the thing that was so intriguing and erotic for them. And it wasn't really how they looked at it, it's how it felt, how it constricted their chest and a bunch of other things. So moon in Aquarius is more about the imagination. It's more about the erotic imagination that is on the fringe. It's an interesting moon. It's very detached. People who have moon in Aquarius can give you a lot of latitude and leeway in your life. They're very non-judgmental. However, that said, when they do get aroused, those radical energies kick into play. And people who have moon in Aquarius in their charts theoretically are here to give birth to something new, right? Something new, the Aquarian ideal in their life, in their own version or own manifestation of it. But with this Aquarian full moon coming up, and remember we talked about the concept of the chain reaction, where everything gets bigger, larger, more exponential. This Aquarius new moon, or full moon rather, is going to be very interesting and illuminating towards our biggest Aquarian aspect of the year, and that's on election night, 11/8. 11/8. When the Mars starts the day off at 29 Capricorn, and by 10 o'clock on the East Coast, New York City, goes into 0 degrees Aquarius. That is revolutionary energy, boys and girls. Big time, with Mars driving it. This is on election night. We have a lot to look forward to in an intriguing kind of way. We are living in the midst of history. You're in it. These are those times. So let's just go around the chart a little bit. This full moon, if it shows up in your first house, which means you're Aquarius rising, your emotions are on full display. They're eclectic. They can be a tad extreme if you're triggered, but you really don't care. You just want to let it all hang out. Go for it and do it in a creative way. If the moon shows up in the second house, What does that mean? It means, of course, you're Capricorn rising, and people of Capricorn rising and Aquarius in the second house, they tend to be people that have forward-thinking ideas about money and finance. And the moon there might get you to hone in on a hunch or two that puts you ahead of the curve or ahead of your competition when it comes to money and finances. Follow the hunches, but it has to be something that is slightly avant-garde or ahead of its time. You'll look like a prophet if you actually take it on. What if we have Aquarius full moon in the third house? That would mean that the rising sign would be Sagittarius. Or Aquarius full moon in the third house is all about the abstract expression of emotion as an idea. You communicate it to people around you in ways that they may not have put together before. And you may be slightly unusual or kind of out there as you talk about feelings that are, well, objectified to the point of being, experimental, but it's a really good way to get in touch with deep stuff that might be a little more abstract and take a bit of the edge off of it, almost a disembodied kind of channeling of one's own emotions. What if we put it into the fourth house, house of the home, that makes your rising sign Scorpio, with moon in Aquarius in the fourth house? It's time to open your home up to new and unusual ways of doing things. New recipes, new foods, new diets, maybe bringing in new technology into your home. That would be great as it would relate to being able to streamline your home and see your own mother in a unique and enlightened sort of way. If we put the moon into the fifth house, you're Libra rising, and with moon in Aquarius transiting the fifth house, your relationship to your children, if you have them, becomes more detached. You see them less as your children and more as little guardians of the universe or their own beings that are incarnating into an earth suit. There's objectivity there, and yet at the same time, they're still special, they're still your children. From a creative point of view, you should really try to take up a hobby that's a little bit different, slightly further afield than you've done before and in the past. So if you're a Libra rising, of course, with Aquarius, you may want to get into something that's related to media, and if not media, perhaps something that's more fifth house oriented, like the arts, painting, sculpture. You'll figure it out. Let's put transiting full moon into the sixth house, which means you're a Virgo rising. And with that, with transiting moon in the sixth house in Aquarius, you want to find new ways to heal your body and your emotions, because that's the house. That's the sixth house of health, healing, and Dharma. When it comes to your work, you may want to try to influence how systems are being incorporated by bringing in technology or something that's more streamlined and less, say, 20th century. But from a healing perspective, think about, again, Virgo rising, think about new and different modalities that will help you heal your body, mind, and spirit. Let's put it up there on the seventh house cusp. Hey, guess what? That's Leo rising. And if you've got moon and Aquarius in your seventh house, now is not the time to be detached emotionally, unless, of course, you want to get some distance from another person or another situation in your life. Give yourself some perspective. Now, if you are Leo rising, guess what? That moon in the seventh house can also indicate a meeting with someone who's a lot more unusual than you're accustomed to and used to. So the emotion that that person may channel into your life might be very, very different. But you may want to check it out. Let's put it up into the eighth house. That's the full moon in the eighth house with Cancer on the ascendant. That's an intense moon. And it's in Aquarius. It's almost potentially obsessive. Like you're driven to find out, sort of the source of this unusual kind of erotic need or manifestation in your life. But it's completely different than anything you've ever done before. Now, I would say, I'm not a real moralist, even though I talked about Saturn role tonight. You may want to skip internet porn with that moon in Aquarius in the 8th house, because it could become very, very addictive. However, you may want to play through that, get through the other side, so you can transform that and get into the 2nd house, which is all that Leo energy, that sun energy, the body energy. Don't be afraid to burn through the taboo to get to the other side. Let's move the moon up to the 9th house, and we're going to put Gemini on the ascendant, and that's travel. If you have Gemini on the ascendant, you've got moon in Aquarius up in the 9th house. I hope you're taking a vacation. It'd be great. But if not, then take a vacation through virtual reality or something online that allows you to unlock your very logical and very perceptive Gemini ascendant, so you can take a flight of fancy up into the 9th house with the moon in Aquarius to visit exotic people and cultures from this world or others. Okay, we're almost done. We're going to throw Taurus on the ascendant, moon in Aquarius in the 10th house. And what we're talking about there is looking at how you work in a very different kind of way. Flipping the idea of what you do for a living and what you do for something that's connected to your vision or something that has a longer reaching goal into the future, that this is a time to allow yourself to have an emotional draw towards that thing. If you could do that, then that emotional draw towards that thing will catapult you into the next century if you're a Taurus rising. Okay? We'll put the moon over there, transiting moon, full moon, Aquarius, with Aries there, right there on the 1st house cusp. And that's really all about your peer group and finding a newer peer group, one that might be less jaded than your peer group or your friends that you're hanging out with. How does that sound? Does that sound good? Yeah, that sounds good. You also may want to make friends with your mother if you're an Aquarius rising. We'll do one more. And it's the final one, Pisces on the ascendant with that moon in Aquarius, 12th house. We've gone all the way around the chart. Moon Aquarius, 12th house. If you're Pisces rising, then you're dealing with your emotions in a very unique way. Super unique. Get ready to maybe crank up some channeling. I don't know. But it should be very interesting with that moon in Aquarius if you're in the 12th house for your Pisces rising. I mean, you may just, start speaking in 50,000-year-old tongues. I'm Robert Phoenix. You're listening to the 11th house. We got a couple of phone calls here. Here's somebody that's been on the looks like a Skype line for a while. Let's check in with them, see where they're at. Hi there. Welcome to the show. And we get a listener. Let's take the 860 number. Hi there. Welcome to the show.
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. My name is Lisa, and I'm glad we got on. We're great fans of yours.
Oh,
okay.
Who are we?
Oh, that's just me and my wife, Lisa. Well, Janine. I'm Lisa.
Oh, hi, Janine. How are you?
Okay, that's great.
Well, thanks for calling
my
in.
Birthday. Thanks. We're great fans.
Okay, when is your birthday?
June 28th. No. June 27th, 1959.
Hold on a second. Let me get in here.
1:47.
Where are you calling from?
We're actually calling from Las Vegas, but I was born. We live in Connecticut.
Okay. So June 27th.
1959.
1959. Okay.
1:47 a.m. 1:47 a.m. in Connecticut.
So you guys are a tag team, huh?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Las Vegas, Nevada. Okay. Get me punched up. I have you as Taurus rising and Sun in Cancer right? No, Sun in what is that? June 20th. Sun in Cancer, and then Moon in Pisces. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. All right, so we've got some time here. What do you want to talk about?
We have two questions. Well, go ahead, please. One thing is career, and also a lawsuit that's been going on forever. A federal lawsuit.
Okay, career and a federal lawsuit.
Yeah.
Okay, now who is this for again?
Lisa.
Lisa, okay. All right, so career. Lisa, you've got Pluto coming up on your midheaven. So a transiting Pluto is at 15 degrees. You've got Capricorn at 19. Next year, Pluto gets up to 20 degrees. So it will ingress into your 10th house. That's a major transformation when it comes to the work that you're doing. Whatever you're doing, it is going to change. It'll change in a big way. And sometimes those changes are not in your power or your control. Sometimes when Pluto hits the midheaven, people are fired. Sometimes when Pluto hits the midheaven, people have a company gets bought, and next thing you know, they're redundant and they're out in the streets. When Pluto hits the midheaven, sometimes if you are unemployed or your career is stalling, there could be the obverse effect, which is where all of a sudden, let's say your company buys somebody else's company, and you're the one that sticks around because somebody else is redundant. You know, it could be those, but I guarantee you it is not in your control. It's not like you can direct the forces of transformation that are coming at you. And the way that Pluto works is that it burns out what is no longer useful. So what comes into play, what comes into being is the spirit of rebirth with that. So wherever you are a year from now is going to be different from what you're doing right now. The results or the mechanisms in order to catalyze that transformation or change may have been dramatic, or they may have been mundane in the eyes of the world, but dramatic in your own life. But the gains that have the potential of coming out of that can be quite profound. As Pluto moves forward over the course of the next couple of years, you're going to have a Pluto-Moon opposition in your chart, which means that you've got, Pluto-Mercury. You've got this Cancerian Mercury at 28 degrees. 2 years from now, Pluto gets, I think, around 23, 24. It moves into that oppositional orb. It means that the forces of the world, and when I say the world, I'm talking about the Saturnian world, the Capricornian world of business and the corporatocracy and government and all that stuff that seems so much larger than we are in kind of a maybe an Orwellian sense. But it's forcing that Mercury in Cancer, which is what I would call native Mercury. It thinks about things like continuity and feeding and nurturing and repairing and building and bonding, all those things that we associate with Cancer, especially down in the fourth house, where your thoughts, your ideas, the ability to communicate is quite deep, by the way. You know, you have a lot of depth connected to you with the Mercury-Jupiter trine and the Mercury-Moon trine, all water. So you have psychic ability. Now, this energy is part of this inverted triangle, all pointed down to Mercury in the fourth house, must reach the 10th house, which means it has to go out into the world, which means that your thoughts and ideas and your feelings must reach more people. So this is along the lines of somebody who's a speaker, an orator, or perhaps a teacher, a writer. So over the course of the next 2 years, this energy is forcing you almost like a volcanic eruption to be shared with the world. So it means less of a private life, more of a public life, and talking about ideas and things that are organic and meaningful and have to do with sustainability and things along those lines. So I see that go ahead.
Could that be film or television at all?
It might be. You know, you've got, you know, when you get into this opposition, I mean, you're dealing with the 10th house, which is the world at large. And part of your 10th house has 5, 10, almost 15 degrees of Aquarius, which is the media. So potentially, I would say yes. You're very creative. You've got a Venus-Mars conjunction in Leo in the 5th house. You're unusually creative, to be honest with you. And part of that could be on public display. Something's going to happen, and it's changing your life in a big way. But it's like you've just got to get out of your way with this thing and just let it happen. And whatever it is. So we had career. What was the other piece?
A lawsuit.
Oh, a lawsuit. Okay. Well, that's tricky, right? Because when we get into the law, we talk about Sagittarius and we talk about Libra. Those are the 2 signs that rule and regulate law. So Saturn is going through your 8th house in Sagittarius, which means that you don't necessarily know where it's going because it's in the underworld, right? That is judgment. Saturn Sagittarius is judgment, and it's in the underworld, and it's brewing, and it may be a real deep source of psychic turmoil for you when it goes through the 8th house. Anytime you get into Saturn 8th house, you're going through death. You're going through a death, and the death has to do, in this case, with the belief system or belief systems and things that relate to law, justice, all those wonderful Sagittarius things. Best thing I could recommend is to just give it all up. Give it all up. I know it sounds like a cop-out. This is true, though, when you get into the 8th house. You can't manipulate shit. You've got to get down. You got to literally get down with Saturn going through the 8th house. And it is not some kind of casual prostration, right, to the Lord or to the divine. It is deep, it is profound. It's on your knees. It's like, please, whatever you need to do, just do this. I pray for justice. I surrender and I let go. That's Saturn through the 8th house for potentially a lawsuit. But there are different applications of Saturn, different signs go through the 8th house. But we're talking about this one right now. I see resolution coming to you in the middle of, it's actually the third to fourth week of September, and maybe even early October. That's when Jupiter conjuncts your true node in Libra in the 6th house. And so true node in Libra is all about justice. It's all about balance. It's all about fairness. And Jupiter comes in and conjuncts your true node at the end of September. So there can be early October. So there can be some resolution. But before that happens, get down into that 8th house and just, surrender, let go, hand it over, to the divine justice of the Logos to be worked out, through this domain. And I think you have a better shot at getting to what you want and need around this. It's an unusual way to go about it. And you have Uranus and Leo at 14 degrees. You have Saturn right around 9-10, moving forward, going direct in trine with Uranus. So it's about going about it differently from the inside out versus the outside in.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I hope I answered a couple of questions, and keep on being fans. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye guys. Okay, you're listening to 11th House Radio. I'm Robert Phoenix, and we're in the live reading section of tonight's show. I really kind of wanted to go, not too long tonight and do kind of a blitz. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it out there. I'll squeeze in one more live reading, 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. And if you want to call in and get a live reading, we'll put you on the air. See how that went? It was real simple, real easy. It wasn't mean, wasn't heavy. And if we don't do it in the next 5 minutes, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ease on out of here. I'm going to segue off into the latter part of my nocturnal experience. So we got a big week coming up here. Let's just kind of forecast the week. We've got the moon, Aquarius, full moon Aquarius. Remember, it is in opposition with the rule of the king, the rule of Roy, the energies, revolution and change. Or in the midsummer's air. Actually, it's past midsummer, isn't it? We're late summer. Late summer's air. All right, why don't I get on out of here? Nobody's calling in. But you can reach me at my website, robertphoenix.com. You can check out some of the stuff I talked about earlier. And I will be starting up my new show very quickly. It's called 15 Minutes of Flame. It'll happen every day, early in the morning. Get you going. Get you going. All right. So bring around Philip K. Dick. Have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Have a better week. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open what's possible. I'll see you on Friday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu. Perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this. Such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.